Hi, welcome to Love Saranghae with Peter and Andrea. In the next 30 minutes, we'll take you on a journey into the exciting world of entrepreneurship, relationships, and the secrets behind achieving that coveted glow. Are you ready? Let's go.
Welcome back to another episode of Love Saranghae with us, Peter and Andrea. Today we're going to be talking about Peter's journey from being a cashier at his parents' convenience store in St. Catharines, Ontario, small town, to becoming the founder and CEO of our two award-winning skincare companies, Saranghae Skin and Aurora Skin Science. Peter's story is one of immense struggle and hardship, but it's also one of power and resilience, fierce determination, and entrepreneurial spirit. It's where I got mine from. If you have a dream sitting on your heart that feels too big or too unbelievable to achieve, then this episode is for you. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Here we go. All right. Thanks, Peter, for being open to sharing today. I think you have a powerful story, and we're excited. I'm excited for this one. Can you start by taking our listeners all the way back to the early days when you were living in Korea? What happened, and why did you guys leave Korea for the first time, and where did you go?
Okay, so great question, and it's a pretty interesting story. Hopefully, I'll tell it correctly. So every Korean male has to serve in the military, okay? And my dad served as the mechanic in the Korean Air Force. So he entered the Air Force to do his military service, and in that, he was a mechanic. He always tells me that he loved and hated it because it was a miserable experience being in the military, but he met some of his best friends in the Air Force. So when he was discharged, he and about 12 other Korean aircraft mechanics were hired as consultants and mechanics for the Iranian national airline, commercial airline. So Iran hired us. I don't know why. I think this was around 1977, 1978. So it was, maybe I was 3 or 4 years old at the time. I don't remember a lot of it, but I do remember some. And the whole family moved to Iran. We lived in a place called Tabriz, which is like a northwest of Iran, pretty far from Tehran, actually. So, it was a culture on its own. The food was awesome, and the cockroaches were the size of my fist. Massive cockroaches. Oh, yeah. They were everywhere.
So you were 3 years old and you remember the cockroaches.
Oh, but you can't forget the cockroaches. They were so big and so ugly. Like, still have nightmares about them. But I do have fond memories of Iran. But in 1979, the Shah of Iran fell during the Iranian Revolution, and we were given 72 hours to leave Iran. That was the notice. So they came in and told my dad, leave Iran, you have 72 hours, here's your tickets. I remember my dad waking me up in the middle of the night, and all the Korean families, all of our families were packed onto a bus, headed for the airport. So we all left at the same time. So
in Korea. I can only imagine. Can I just interrupt you for a minute? As a mom now, and we have small kids, 2 and 7, and just thinking about that time, what your parents went through, how scared they must have been not knowing what was going to happen, needing to pack up your life in 72 hours and leave.
What I'm more interested in? Yeah, it must have been tough. I think it was. But what I'm curious about is what led up to that moment, right? Because the Shah, the revolution was when Ayatollah Khomeini took over the Shah of Iran. So there was a whole regime change. So what led up to that was this buildup of the Iranian people saying that they don't want secular Westernism and they want to go back into the hardline, right-wing religious sect that Khomeini represented. So, we were too young to understand, but there must have been a buildup. And how long did that take? What was happening around them for the years that we were there? That's what I wonder the most. It would have been interesting. So so we left Iran, we went back to Korea, and my dad had a very tough time finding a job. And the reason why was it's almost unbelievable, because the reason that I was told was that my grandfather was one of the very first photographers in Korea. So he learned the trade of photography from Japan. At the time, technologically, we were far behind Japan at the time. When Japan invaded Korea, my dad's family was branded as collaborators and traders. So near the end of the Japanese occupation, beginning of the Korean War, my dad's family was branded as a collaborator and trader because my grandfather had connections to Japan. So my dad was branded the son of a trader. So he couldn't get hired. Yeah, so nobody would hire him. So he had to get creative.
I don't think I knew this.
Yeah, it was an interesting time. Korea's still very like caste-oriented, very family-oriented. If you came from a bad family or if you came from, perhaps some connection to a North Korean, they brand you. Like it's not a great society that way. So he was jobless for about 2 years. He was looking for a job for 2 or 3 years. But in 1982, we lucked out. We were chosen to be part of the Canadian National Helicopter Program. And so we packed our bags for Toronto. And life seemed pretty good.
What does that mean? Like you were chosen to do what?
Yeah, so at that time, the government decided to pursue a project whereby they would fund a national airline program or aircraft program where the Canadian government would produce helicopters, like Bombardier produces aircraft, right? So they wanted to create this national program, just like Embraer has with Brazil and Airbus has in Europe, a Canadian program, aerospace program, where they will produce helicopters. And they hired a bunch of aircraft engineers and mechanics from around the world. With us was about, again, 10 other families that were hired, his colleagues and his friends that all came from Korea to Canada. We all came at the same time. Or actually, some came earlier, we came a little later, right? So life seemed pretty good. Unfortunately, the program was canceled. I still don't know why. So we were given permanent residency, we were given a job, we were given all of this, immigration, they brought us in, and then they canceled it right as we got to Canada. So the government gave us a choice. They gave us a choice. You could stay as a permanent resident, or we can send you back. We'll pay for the cost. So you go back to Korea. We chose to stay because we had no other choice, right? We didn't have a job to go back to. So we chose to stay, and we opened up a corner store, a variety store in St. Catharines called Ontario Variety. And that is how I became a cashier and stock boy, forced to work long hours with no pay and get yelled at by the boss every day.
That's how your dad.
And my mom.
Okay, hold on, back up. I have a question that I think a lot of people may ask because of Kim's convenience. It's a stereotype for sure. What is it about Koreans coming to Canada and opening up convenience stores? Like, what is it about convenience stores that Koreans open up? Why?
So there's actually very good So Kim's Convenience is a very, very accurate portrayal of Koreans owning stores. It is very accurate. It is almost too accurate. I think the guy who created it, his parents owned a convenience store. And there are multiple reasons why this happens. Number one is that everyone that came to Canada at the time from Korea opened a Korean convenience store. So you just follow the community. Community is very important, right? You come here not knowing the language. And two, actually, there's two reasons. One was that. And two, at the time, the Korean bank, the KBC, it's called the Korean Commercial Bank, offered loans to any Korean who would open up stores. They had this model, like for years, for a decade and a half, Koreans would come and open a store and they would pay their loans. It was a great model. Nobody defaulted. So they said, okay, well, there's a little model that we know. Let's lend money to Koreans to come in to open a store. Until it didn't work anymore.
No idea about that.
Yeah, that was it.
Interesting. So that makes sense too, though. Like they come there, they find the Korean community. This is what all the Koreans are doing because of this bank loan that doesn't default. And you sort of come to a place that feels a little bit like home. Like you're surrounded by other Koreans who are doing the same thing as you.
Exactly.
And feel supported and feel like this is not fair.
Well, look, you come to this country and all your friends in the community are operating stores and they say, why don't you go get a loan? We'll help you. And then you can open up a store and we'll help you. And you say, no, I'm gonna open up a future shop or I'm gonna open up a computer store. And they're gonna be like, what do you mean? Why are you doing this?
Why would
Nobody
you
else
do
is
that?
doing it. Exactly. So that's how it happened.
Yeah. It makes sense. It makes a lot of sense, especially in a foreign land. You go where you're familiar and comfortable.
Exactly.
And safe. I remember Kim's Convenience. A side note, Peter took me, I think it was one of our beginning dates, maybe a fifth date. And Peter took me to see Kim's Convenience at a small little theater here in Toronto. And I remember at one point, Peter started crying. Sorry, I don't know if you mind that I'm sharing that you cry.
No, it's okay. I cry when...
But he started to cry. And I looked over at him and I was like, holy crap, this guy is like 6'3" meathead, like bulky muscle head. And he's crying. Oh my God. And I think at that moment, I was like, I think I really like this guy.
I brought back a lot of memories for sure. A lot of
I'm sure.
good and bad memories.
You don't have that emotional response. Of course, it must have been very real. And
I mean, to be honest, I cried every Korean drama, so it's not like...
That's true. But I didn't know that at the time. Anyway, side note. But what was it like, I mean, being an immigrant from Korea in Canada at that time? Like, what were some of the challenges that your family experienced, you experienced going to school there, your brothers? How did you overcome all of that?
Well, when we landed in Canada, and I remember that day very clearly, we had $600 in the bank. That's all we had to our names. Basically, it was a bunch of bags and $600. My dad spoke some English, but my mom and us, the brothers, none of us spoke the language. So it was very foreign. But we did have friends that came to Canada before us, and that community is probably what saved us, to be honest. Kids can be cruel, and of course, there were a lot of racism back in the days. I'm sure there's racism now, but, people hide it well.
Right.
When you're young, kids, it's all about names, and they have no filters. I have a memory of, we used to get abused actually by this daughter of a school bus driver. So, my brother and I, we would fall asleep in the bus, and she would wake us up periodically by banging our head against the window. She'd go, wake up, and she'd bang her head. Yeah. We were like 8 and 6, and this young lady had to be 16, and the bus driver said nothing because it was her granddaughter. Yeah. So we had to go through this BS with this young lady banging our heads against the window to wake us up. And I don't know why she wanted to wake us up. We're just sleeping.
And you didn't have any voice at that time. You probably felt like, who are you going to tell?
We didn't even speak the language.
What is your mom going to do? Like, what is anyone going to do?
We didn't even speak the language. Like, what are we supposed to say to whom? Right? So that was one example, right? So my parents worked. Yeah. My parents worked odd jobs to support the family. So they picked worms. They worked for delivery. They worked delivery for grocery stores, which still exists to this day on Bloor Street. We went there.
Back up.
Yeah.
Hold on, back up. They picked worms. What does that mean? Yeah.
There's an industry. So you know those worms that you sell at fishing stores for bait and tackle?
No way.
So yeah, and they pay by the can. So you put on these headlights. They give you cans, and then you go to a field and you basically pick worms and you put into a can. They pay you like $5 for a can of worms. So you pick as many as you can, and you get paid by the can. Yeah, and they still do it apparently.
That's so interesting. I didn't know that was a job.
Yeah, it's a job.
That's amazing. I think the one thing I can say at that time is that my parents as well, were very creative in how they made money.
Yeah.
They were very innovative. They didn't have, they couldn't be proud. They had to just do whatever they could to earn that dollar. And they came up with really interesting ways to do it.
Whatever they could, they did it, right? They tried different things. Some stuck, some didn't. Yeah, and they just worked a bunch of odd jobs, right?
Like, it's so commendable. I find kids nowadays are like, oh, I'm not going to do that, or I won't do that. And it doesn't teach you anything. But being in jobs like that really teaches you grit and, like, how to work.
Yeah, I mean, I think we work hard so that our kids don't have to go through that. And there's a good and bad thing on that as well. I don't want my kids to have to, I don't want my kids to have to, go to a strange country with no language, no money, a family to support, be in that type of environment where it's highly stressful. Because if you don't make it, a lot of people don't, then it's catastrophic. So So yeah, there's a lot of things you can say about that for sure.
Of course, we don't want that for our children, which is why we do what we do. But it is something to admire in our parents for what they've done and how far they've come. And it's a skill in a way that you have to build because you don't have a choice.
So my parents worked odd jobs. They saved up and saved and was able to buy Ontario Variety in about 2 years after we landed. The glue that held everything together was my mom. She worked, especially at the store, she worked 6 a.m. to midnight, 7 days a week, cooked all the meals, washed all the clothes by hand, right? And I have this one story that stands out. So one morning, I remember we woke up to a mess in the basement of our store. Someone had broken in and stole all of our cigarette inventory, which was our number one seller. The value of that inventory was probably in this $20,000 range. So it was a lot of money tied up in inventory. Yeah. My dad was so defeated and so depressed that he just kind of lay on the bed refusing to move that day. He didn't want to do anything. He was just kind of complaining and whining the whole time. My mom, though, she sat quietly for about, 10 to 15 minutes. And then she just got up, opened the store, worked all day, smiled at the customers like nothing happened, and not a one word of complaint. That woman is a rock. And I've never met a more hardworking person than my mom. And in that moment, I remember I asked her years later, like, what went through your mind? And she just said, somebody had to feed the family. Like, there's nothing you can do. You had to go make money. So you went down and you worked. That's it. That's all you can do. And that's exact. That was a memory that I remember very, very well.
Oh, the mom. I love her so much. So special.
It's amazing.
Well, I mean, your mom, from creating her own skincare line to help her sister heal her burn scars, to figuring this convenience store out without being able to speak the language, and still raising 3 of you boys, rambunctious boys. I mean, there's something about mothers. Something about mothers.
If you really think about it, my mom, she basically, this was very common in Korea, but she basically gave up her life. She must have had dreams. She must have had goals. And she gave it up because her husband couldn't find a job in Korea, or had to go to Iran to find a job, couldn't find a job in Korea, had 3 kids, and had to move across the half the world to Canada because she had to follow her husband. Because, traditionally, he's the breadwinner of the family. And so everything that she wanted
to do, like she wanted to follow, she wanted to go with you. She obviously
of course.
Another option. But
it wasn't really her dream, right?
No,
so
of course.
It's very interesting that way. So in a sense, we brought her dream back to life when we brought the dormant, our skincare brand, through her early work before all of this came about.
I hope she's proud of you, of us.
I think she is. She's told me many times.
I hope so. Bless her. I guess my next question for you is, like, what was it like working with them and living upstairs? So you guys lived upstairs on top of the convenience store. You had like one room, and there's like 5 of you.
Yeah.
So can you share what that was like working? How old were you when you started working at the convenience store?
Well, okay, so I think we moved in, we were grade 5, right? So it had to be 10 years old, I think, 10 or 11, right? So we lived on top of the store, and it was about 750 square feet. So it was tiny. And I went back. Okay. We went back years later to see what it was like. It was tiny. My parents had one room, and my brothers and I shared another room. So it was 3 of us, and it was cramped. Okay. We had no heat, no air conditioning, no shower, no dryer or washer.
Nothing.
But looking back, nothing. We had to get baseboard heater. We had to get portable heaters in the wintertime.
Okay.
We also had to put cellophane, like plastic sheets, over the windows. That was our insulation, because the place was very poorly insulated, and we didn't have central heating, so we had to conserve heat as much as possible. Lots of blankets. Mm-hmm. But I got to tell you, if you ask my mom, she'd probably say it was very stressful and she didn't want to go back. But looking back, for us, we had mostly happy memories. Like, we had a lot of great friends. We were out a lot playing. We grew up in that environment. So I don't look at it with sad memories at all. I think we had, it was a good life.
You also, I find kids who get to share a room, they're closer. And
they are.
judging by the way you are with your brother and with Jay, you guys are really close.
Well, you had
And
no
I
choice,
think
right?
part of it. I mean, you didn't have a
Yeah.
choice at that time, but I think the unexpected outcome of
Yeah.
that was that you grew up literally hip to hip, side by side.
Yeah, it was
And that's
interesting. It was
really
very
special
interesting.
to have that relationship with brothers.
I think the greatest day of our lives was when my dad bought a, what do you call it, a portable window air conditioning, because it was in the summertime, it was so hot, and he installed an air conditioning unit in one room because we could only afford one room. And everybody spent time in that room when we were hot. And that was like the greatest point in our life because it was like air conditioning.
Maybe that's why you sweat so much.
Well, I sweat anyway.
Okay, so let's move on. So you're 19 now. You graduate from high school. And you choose mechanical engineering at the University of Waterloo. Why? How did you get there?
I mean, yeah. So, like every Asian parent says this,
okay.
right? Doctor, lawyer, engineer, right? It's like drilled into your head since you're like 5 years old.
Good
You're going to be one of
choices.
those three, right? Yeah. And nobody ever says you're going to be an entrepreneur or you're going to be a store owner, right? You're going to sell stuff in a corner from a location. Nobody ever says that, right? Because it's not
That's
prestigious So kind of like what I say to Marcus, right? Stanford or bust. I'm drilling into him that he's going to Stanford. So at one point, though, I thought maybe I would want to be a doctor, that I would want to go into medicine. And I was pretty serious about that until the very last moment. I had a coming to Jesus moment with myself. And I said, do you want to be a doctor for the right reasons? Is it because you want to be successful, make a lot of money, have a good career, or is it because you want to help people? And I thought medicine was that one profession where you have to have the right motivation. You can't be helping people if that's not your motivation, right?
So right.
Like
that's really mature of you for having that
Right?
conversation with yourself at that age.
Because I was gonna, I think it was the GMAT or the MCAT, was the MCAT test. I was gonna go write it, and then at the final moment I said, no, it's not right. It's not right to want to be a doctor and be intimate in the lives of people if my motivation is just to make money. So I went away from that. I also had a very brief flirtation with the RMC, which stands for Royal Military College.
I didn't
Officer
know that.
training. Yeah. I was also very close, my second to going into the Canadian military. And the reason why I decided against it was because I actually went to the RMC location in Kingston, and I sat down with the students, and one of them, I said, hey, how is it like? It looks pretty cool. Buildings are old. I mean, you got a lot of facilities here. It's very historic. And the guy's like, for the love of God, do not come. It is pure hell. It's like, don't come. It's not what you think it will be. And I'm like,
No way.
yeah. I do often wonder, though, what my life would have been like if I had become a military officer. It would have been completely different. Completely
For
different.
sure.
Right?
And
So-
maybe miserable. That sounds horrible.
Yeah. Who knows, though? Because, I'm all about discipline, right? I like discipline. I
are.
like routine. I like
thrive
chain
in
of
that
command.
environment.
Yeah. So I don't know.
That's
Maybe I would have been really well, right?
Entrepreneurship, which is the complete opposite of all of that.
So I chose engineering, though, and I went to University of Waterloo for mechanical engineering because I wanted to build cars. I thought it would be fun. And so my last job was at Toyota. I kind of had ownership of the stamping line there. But I was in the end I was wrong. It wasn't that fun. So that's what happened.
Why? What wasn't fun about it? Like what were you expecting, and what was it actually?
Well, I mean, look, so I think every boy's dream of building cars comes from a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, right? A Lamborghini, at that time it was a Countach, and the Ferrari, I think, was a 350, right? The Magnum PR car. We all loved sports cars back in the day, right? Because they were cool. And the dream is to be able to design those cars. Like, how cool would it be to design the next supercar? But building a car is not like that. Building a car is automation. It's machinery. It's, finding out how to stamp a part from a metal piece, or how the welding guns go, or, how do I cut 2 seconds off the line? How do I talk to the land? So it's just another job, right? It wasn't all that fun. And in Toyota, I think I had fun for about a month. And then, working from 6 a.m. till 8 o'clock in the evening in a darkened room with no windows, trying to fix robotic arms or trying to fix how to shave 2 seconds off a stamping line. Yeah, it wasn't all that fun for me.
So it sounds like what you wanted to do is design the car, but you didn't want to actually do the building of the cars. You didn't want to be in the factory.
I will tell you this. If somebody had come to me and said, I would like for you to go to Italy to a firm called Pininfarina and design the next supercar, I think it would have been a different story.
Totally.
Right? Yeah. Right? Or work for...
I would like to do that too.
Right? Yeah. Or maybe I could become a crew member for the Red Bull Formula One racing team. That would have been a different story. But building a car line, a Toyota or GM or Ford, no, it's just another factory job. No, thank you. Okay. So that's what happened.
Got it. That's so interesting. So you went from cashier to mechanical engineer to skincare entrepreneur. That's a pretty unusual path, all of it. So what inspired you to venture into skincare? Like, what was...
Well, I mean,
what was the thing, or were there many things, and what were some of the challenges you faced?
I think we discussed before that getting into skincare was an accident, right? After deciding that building cars was not what I really wanted to do, I started my own web development marketing firm, and I grew that company from just myself to about 25 employees, and then I exited in 2016. And I will tell you that when I started that marketing company, I had like $500 in my bank account, and I wasn't going to make rent the next month. So there were some very harrowing times when I started the company. So I exited around 2016. And then you and I had that fateful trip to Sephora where we decided to bring back my mother's dormant skincare product and start Saranghae. I was going to name the brand Hello Gorgeous. Remember that? I said that was going to name that. Yeah, the skincare brand. But what happened was, I remember that I had a conversation with my mom on the phone around that time. And when she hung up, she said, "사랑해요," which means I love you, right? I love you in Korean, right? Yeah. And my mom rarely tells me she loves me. She doesn't. She never actually says "사랑해" to me. Like I know she does, but in Korea you don't say it, right?
You don't share affection that way.
Yeah, and she rarely says that to me. And so she said it on that day when she hung up, and I was like floored. It rattled me. I was like, why did she say "I love you," right? And that got my attention, which gave me the inspiration to name the company Saranghae, which means I love you in Korean. That was the moment I decided to name the company Saranghae.
I actually remember all the times your mom said she loves you, because every time she'd say it, which was really rare, like you said, you would tell me. She'd like, you think she's sick?
After we got married...
Why do you think she said that?
I know.
She's a mom.
She said it a lot more after we got married and after we had kids. Yeah. But when I was growing up, I can count on one hand the number of times we said that to each other, right? Koreans are known to be very stoic in that sense.
Yeah, I know. I remember when I met your parents, I would go and just embrace them in a hug, and they were just like frozen. Like, what do we do? Do we hug you back?
Oh my God!
And they were so uncomfortable, but now they're just like big huggers and big kisses, and I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, it was very foreign to them. And in terms of challenges, I had to learn everything from scratch. So starting the skincare company. So I had no experience, no suppliers. I had no idea what it took. I didn't even know I didn't even know what I didn't know. But again, I was lucky. I had a few contacts in Korea who had contacts in skincare industry, and they set up a meeting for us. The Koreans are very conscientious and proud of their products, so I knew I could trust them to help test and optimize our formulations. So we worked very well together. But they took a very long time to sign off on something, and they asked for very large minimum quantities. That was the biggest challenge I had when we first started the company. I think when we first started working with my first Korean partner, they asked for a 10,000 quantity minimum per SKU or per product, and I couldn't afford that. So I begged, sent gifts, and begged some more. I really begged a lot. And it worked.
I think one of the other challenges that you faced with working with Koreans is the way that they do business. They're very respectful and proud, and they have a hard time telling when things aren't going quite the way you planned or you hoped.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll beat around the bush, or they just won't respond to emails for a while.
Yeah.
And that can be so frustrating because you're the complete opposite. You're very direct. Whether or not it's a good idea, you just say it and you deal with whatever comes from that. And they're the complete opposite. So I remember that being that still is a challenge that we face now.
Well, it's interesting. It's been 8 years since I started the brand, and we've gone through a whole host of partners. Some great, some not so great. What's great now, though, is that I start the relationship on that note. I simply say to them right off the bat, listen, I value information upfront. I value honesty and honest opinions information upfront. We'll deal with the consequences later. I'm not going to penalize you for bringing me information that I need to know, even if they're bad. So, like, for example, one of the companies we work with right now, they literally come to me with all sorts of problems. Sometimes it causes delays, but they're not afraid to share. They'll share the information raw and unfiltered. And I like that. That's great.
Yeah, that's how you work.
Yeah.
It's easier to, that's a communication point in business in general and in personal too. Like, I grew up in a different way. I grew up in a way where you don't talk about these things and you keep it quiet and hope it just goes away. And that can be very frustrating for the other person. So,
well, it never goes away. Right? It never goes away. In our industry, it doesn't go away. It just amplifies.
Yeah, it gets bigger, exactly. So the idea is learning how to engage in difficult conversations and being confident in yourself and the other party to figure it out, whatever it is. Really important skill in business, I believe. Okay, so this is a question that I am very curious about because I don't know if I know the answer to this one, but behind every successful entrepreneur, there are often many, many mentors and role models who provide guidance and inspiration. Who are some of your key figures that influenced you and your journey, and what valuable lessons did you learn from them?
Well, there are... Obviously, my mother was my biggest role model inspiration. You could say that she was the beginning of Saranghae, even though it was dormant for years. And I learned my work ethic from her. So she's like the point of everything, right? Yeah, she's like the genesis of everything. So for sure, she's my biggest role model inspiration. I think working with my wife, has been really, really good because you bring the yang or the yin side to my yang. Whereas I focus on formulation, crossing the T's, dotting the I's, supply chain, making sure everything just works smoothly from a business perspective. I lose sight of sometimes the human aspect, working with customers, understanding what they really want. Yeah, so that has been an eye-opener for me working with more closely with you, is that there is a softer side that I need to be aware of that helps complete our brand and what we have to offer to our customers. I think we were missing that before you came on board full time. And then lastly, the other person who helped us a lot, and I have to give shout out to Mr. Rowe, the founder and president of NowCuz. He's one of our Korean manufacturing partners, our oldest, I think, relationship to date. He's the man that I begged to. And I guess my begging and gift giving helped because he helped us a lot in the beginning. And I don't know if we could have graduated to where we are today if it wasn't for him, because he helped us minimize our cash flow, or at least flatten our cash flow. He gave us things that he normally wouldn't give, or it was not spelled out in the contract. And if it wasn't for that, it would have taken a lot longer. I would have had to take investors or larger loans, and it would have been a lot harder for us for sure. So for sure, I have to give him a shout out.
Ah, bless him. That's so sweet. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that part. Ah.
Lots of begging. Please.
You know what, though? It's nice to look back on those people who sort of guided you and helped you along the way. And it is also a reminder for you to be that person for someone else.
Yeah,
when
for sure.
That time comes, because it's like a cycle of giving, and we all grow and we help each other. Like Mr. Rowe has grown because of you and what you've helped him with by doing well in your company, and you grew because of him helping you. So it's kind of a beautiful little cycle of life.
Well, that's business. That's how successful business works, right?
It's so true.
Yeah.
That is business. What you give, you get back, and what you give. Yeah, I love that. Okay. Well, as someone who is so deeply passionate about wellness and skincare, what advice would you give to an aspiring entrepreneur looking to break into the incredibly crazy world of skincare?
Okay, so, well, for better or for worse, yeah. And this is our last question in our last segment. So let's do this with a little advice for people. For better or for worse, the skincare industry has a very low barrier to entry, which means that there are a lot of competitors out there. And if you are a skincare entrepreneur right now, you know what I'm talking about. You have to stand out somehow, whether it's a business model, marketing model, proprietary ingredient, or formulation. You need something that will differentiate your brand or product, for sure. Something. It has to be. You have to stand out from the crowd in any minute way possible. Without that, you're just a Me Too product, and you're gonna get lost on a sea of brands out there. Aside from that, you gotta watch your cash flow. Cash flow is king. Experiment and learn. Look beyond the vanity metrics. So don't worry about the likes. Don't worry so much about how many people follow your Instagram. Don't worry about having the best looking business card. Like, none of that matters. What you want to see is traction. What your customers are telling you, and if people will pay $1 for what you're selling. That is the metric that you're looking for. And watch out for fancy branding, marketing, agency pitches. I know that I know that when you first start out, you want help. And how do I package my product? How do I sell my product? If this is your baby, you know best. Trust your gut. Try something, figure it out, see what happens. Don't pay extra exorbitant prices to agencies who don't really care about your product. All they care about is billing you. So watch your cash flow. Watch your gut.
Can I interrupt you there? Also, remember that it's just figuring out what your brand is, who you are, what your messaging is, and then you're hiring someone to do it for you. They don't even know what your brand is, and so how can they? So it's really important that you yourself do the dirty work at the beginning and figure out who you are, what you sell, what's your fundamental moral and principle of your company. And then you have a better standing to go and hire support. But if you don't really understand who you are and what your business is, then there's no one who's going to save you.
Yeah. So if I can summarize that in a brief sentence, prioritize what is the most important things for your business and work on those. Don't work on things that seems easy and quick wins, but they're not important to it. They're not important in the grand scheme of things. Work on the important things. Yes. That's it.
Good advice from the skincare entrepreneur guru. Well.
Half a guru.
Anyway, a truly inspiring story, Peter. I even didn't know some of these things, so thank you for sharing so openly. Your story is one of perseverance, innovation, and truly the power of following your dreams. You've inspired me so much over the years to take on the hard things and to push through even when times are tough. So because of you, I feel like sometimes I found the courage that I didn't even know I had. So I don't know if you know that, but I thought to share that with you today.
Thanks,
so I hope this episode will inspire all of you too to find your courage and to do the hard things. Because remember, if you can dream it, it's already yours. You just need to figure out how to rise up and get it. You've got this. We believe in you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to Live Saranghae with us, Peter and Andrea. If you've enjoyed this episode, leave us a review. Your ratings and reviews help more people like you find our show. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and share this podcast with someone you think would love it. Until next time, love yourself, love one another, and love the world.